All right, so welcome everybody. We're skipping the intro music tonight because Jesse's having technical problems, so we're gonna get right to it. We're gonna blame this on Jesse like we always do. That's kind of how we get started. We were just talking before the show, and it's really interesting. This week we've had this month we've had a lot of firsts. We had our first female, we had our first politician, we had an author. That was the first author we ever had on here. And as we move forward, we have another first tonight. We have Tommy Thompson, a retired police detective from Phoenix PD.
Correct.
He's here with us. We're going to talk cops and robbers and get into all kinds of cool stuff tonight. So, Tommy, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, my privilege.
I appreciate that, man. It's an honor. I'll introduce myself. My name is George Nolan. Kind of like what Jeremy used the term before, harm reduction advocate. That's what I want everybody to be safe as possible, right? Everybody's path's different. I also work for an IOP here called New Freedom, helping people, mentoring them while they're in prison, and then giving them a place to come, a soft landing for when they get home. Jesse, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Jesse Messer. I'm a peer recovery support specialist. I teach peer support certification at a facility called New Freedom. I'm also a recovery and reentry advocate, and I'm happy that you're here.
Thank you. It's very kind of you.
Yes, sir.
And my name is Jeremy Shaw. We know each other. You taught the course that I took over at Scottsdale Community College. I'm grateful for that. I also work in the recovery field. I work at a residential PHP IOP program, also that's centered on reentry and just those that have never been in justice involved that have experienced addiction. You know, mental health and substance use is running rampant, and just do my best to be of service.
Absolutely. And Tommy, why don't you tell us about yourself, man? Star of the show tonight.
Oh, geez, a star of the show. Where do I get the Walk of Fame? Down at 1209 West Madison at the homeless shelter? I don't know. Lived in Phoenix most of my life. Used to live in Wyoming part of the time. I was a cowboy up there. In fact, I started out doing life as wanting to be an ag major in college. I was going to punch cows my whole life. Came down here to take care of my father, who was an invalid. And, of course, I'd lived here before and stuff like that. And then I went through broadcasting school at Ron Bailey School of Broadcasting. Magic is on the air.
Nice.
And the problem was you had to relocate to get a good job. There were some small stations like in Eloy, Casa Grande, Coolidge, some of those. Actually, a couple here in Phoenix. But I was going to have to relocate, and so I started taking the test for the police department. And I'll never forget the day I flunked the first test I took, and because I was told, yeah, it's common sense, everything will be great. Well, when they asked me how much footage of what kind of fire will a C3-4 fire extinguisher put out, I thought, wow. Or if somebody goes into a store and they've got a booster box, have they committed shoplifting, petty theft, or burglary?
I got to ask you really quick. What's a booster box? I've never heard that term before.
So let's say that you go in and maybe you make one or you have one. I don't want to tell everybody how to do this, but like you grab a box of Cheerios, and dump the food out, and you put something inside that to hide it, to conceal it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you guys know what it is.
Yeah.
You just didn't know what it was called.
I've never heard the term. Yeah.
Booster box.
So, and I apologize if I make fun of you. I'm not. I'm just laughing with you, not
No,
at
it's
you.
all
No, we know it was organized retail theft.
So, at any rate, so yeah, I was doing my homework, seeing these guys really know what they're talking about. So, any rate, so I took the test the second time and told a buddy of mine who took it. I said, "Hey, dude, you need to study this stuff." And he said, "Okay," and he flunked it and I passed it. So I remember telling my wife, I said, "Hey, honey, they called and I need to start the police academy on Monday. This is like on a Tuesday or a Thursday the week before." And she goes, "What?" I said, "Yeah, I'm just going to go be a cop for a couple of years and then I'm going to get a real job." And so 40 years later, fast forward, and I mean, you mentioned that I'm a detective. I was a detective certified, but I was a supervisor most of the time that I supervised detectives. So I did that for about 30 years.
Nice.
So I worked narcotics. For 16 years, I did that. And one of the things that we talk about dope that's important to realize is I used to supervise the prescription fraud investigators. Those are the ones that go out and when someone would get a prescription. In the early days, we used to get a handwritten prescription.
Right.
And it might say 7 Percocets, 7 Oxycontin, whatever. But then the person would change it to 7D or 17. Well, that's a crime. People don't understand that's a crime. And we used to investigate those, did street enforcement, so we used to go out and buy and sell drugs. And when I say sell drugs, we sold placebos. Like one of my favorite ones, we used to go to a dope house, and we did what we called demand reductions. And that was to target the people who were using drugs. Wasn't targeting the sellers, because we'd serve a search warrant at a place, and while we were searching, we would set up with placebos. Like normally for crack cocaine, we would have the lab make some up with Pamprin.
Okay.
So when I'd arrest somebody, they get ready to take that and say, dude, the only thing that's going to do is stop your menstrual cramps from bothering you. And, so we did that. So I worked that, and then I got to be one of the public information officers for the City of Phoenix Police Department, and that was a lot of fun. But I saw a lot of stuff. I used to say that my job was to confess other people's sins, and not just, once in a while cops would do bad things, and I'd have to say, who thought this would be a good idea? But then a lot of it was people that would do stuff. And in our community, there's a ton of good people. The vast majority of our community is great people.
I agree.
But as you're well aware, there's an element that are not, and they're out there to hurt people. And unfortunately, I'd have to talk about them when they had hurt somebody. They'd commit a homicide, commit a sexual assault, robbery, any of those kind of things that they would get involved with. I was the one that had to explain that to the community so that they could understand it.
Right. That's not an easy position to be in, right?
No, but as long as you look at it and you're open-minded and you say, it is what it is. And that's one of the things that I always tried to do was never, ever lead people astray. Now, sometimes they would ask a question. They'd say, hey, can you tell me about this person or that? And I would say to them that I don't have that information available right now. It was basically what I was saying is it's not available to give to you right now.
Right.
Because when we're working on an investigation, the last thing you want to do is to have the bad guy, or I shouldn't say bad guy, the suspect know what you're looking for. We had a case, a very high-profile case, in 2018 when I came back to the PIO office, where we had a woman who was in a comatose condition for 26 years since she was 3 years old. Well, she gave birth to a baby.
I remember that. I saw that on the news from prison. Yep.
Well, yeah, and I imagine it sparked some controversy back there because my understanding is in the penal system, they're not real fans of sexual offenders.
No, but it's if there's a class system, that one falls pretty low.
Pretty low.
But on that particular case, we needed to find out and get the information to identify who the suspect was. And if I gave out too much information, the concern I had was that I always had that we had as investigators is, do we give out information that this person then runs and hides? Well, fortunately, we were able to keep it close enough to our vest, even though it was a national story. It might have been international, but I was getting calls from all over the country for more information. And I would do interviews on different programs. I'd say, listen, there was an incident that happened at the facility that was designed to take care. It was a care facility.
Yeah.
And we were able to put that information, keep it close enough that when we arrested him, he was still in the valley.
That's pretty cool. That's saying something, right? Especially with a case like that.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, again, I was a cop for 40 years counting. I don't really need to, but I say that 3 of those years I was a reserve officer, so I was still a certified officer, so for 40 years. And the overwhelming majority of the officers I worked with, not just from Phoenix, but other agencies, were there to make the community a better place, and I think that's important. I think in any job you're in, whatever you're doing, I mean, you're working right now with people that I look at and there's different reasons people get involved in chemical abuse. I mean, think about it. When you talk about prescriptions, from the day your kid hits the ground when he's born, that's a cowboy term, when the colt hits the ground. When they hit the ground, you give them a pill if they're sick. If they're old enough to swallow it, you give them a pill. If they're not, you pour liquids down their throat. I know, because I got 7 kids. And so we teach them those things. When we watch TVs, if you really wanted to taking notice of something, I catch myself watching a lot of the old black and white movies. And almost on every one of those movies, both men and women are lighting up a cigarette. So, and people would say, well, that's not chemicals. Well, it is. I mean,
Absolutely. Try quitting it.
I had a doctor friend of mine that told me that nicotine is one of the most difficult substances to get off if you're addicted to it.
Absolutely, I agree.
But at any rate, I mean, it is what it is, and I think that if you help the community and help make the world a better place. When you leave this world, did you make it a better place, or did you just sit around like a bump on a log?
Or worse.
Or worse,
Absolutely.
make it a bad place.
And I think that's important, especially for people like us coming from the mindset that we've programmed into our minds to hate law enforcement, when really, like the man said, they're just trying to make the community a better place. And it's so easy to hate everybody else for our own actions and the things that we were doing wrong and point the finger like it's everybody else's fault and they're out to get us. But they're just trying to protect our kids, our grandmothers, our grandfathers, our neighbors.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what your particular circumstances are.
I was falsely accused. I was totally innocent on everything. All 3 times I went to prison, all 13 felonies, mistaken identity.
I was 100% guilty and deserved every day of incarceration that I got, if not more.
100% guilty.
Yeah, absolutely the same.
What I was going to say is, was there a time when you were young pups that somebody could have made a difference but didn't? And maybe they tried, and you just said, look, I'm not going to change. I'm not ready to change. When we were off air, I told you that we used to get about 5,000 what we called neighborhood narcotics complaints. And that's where someone calls up and says, hey, look, at the house next door, a car pulls up, the guy in the house comes out, spends 3 minutes with the car, and then he's gone. He does that every other day at 8 o'clock in the morning. And 5,000 of those. And many, many times, we talked off mic, was they would say, can you get my kids off of dope? And I would tell them the most difficult thing I used to have to tell people was, listen, until your loved one is ready to make a change, they're not going to make a change. And if I book them into jail, they're probably not going to make a change until they want to. And the sad thing that I used to tell moms, dads, brothers, sisters, sometimes your loved one does not survive the wait. Sometimes they die before they ever get to that point. And that's a sad thing. I mean, nobody comes to earth and says, hey, dude, I want to do drugs.
Yeah.
And you can't love somebody sober. That's the hardest thing. I mean, I think all of us in our lives have had somebody at one time or another that loved us, that genuinely wished and would have done anything that they possibly could to help us get better. But it wasn't enough. Like you said, we have to want to do it ourselves.
Breathe.
And that takes pain.
So when I was out in patrol as an officer, I would do drunk drivers.
Yeah.
And many, many times they would cuss and moan, why aren't you arresting somebody for doing homicides? Why aren't you doing something for doing this? And I'd look them in the eye and say, listen, you were like standing out in the middle of the street with a gun and popping off a few caps downrange down the street. Most of the time, you're not going to hit anybody. But that one time that you do, look how it is. And look at the results. And would you rather do straight time or do time for DUI, or would you rather do one for manslaughter?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I remember when we were locked up at Bachman, and that whole defund the police was running rampant, like on the prison yard.
Yeah.
And I just looked at this dude who was just saying that, and I looked at him and I said, "So, you're gonna tell me when you run to that phone to go call family right now, and you find out that your mom's house was broken into, what is the first thing you're gonna ask her?"
Mom, let's defund the police.
Yeah.
No, Mom, did you call the police?
Did you call the police, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you call the police? Police are absolutely necessary. They saved our lives, without a doubt. They saved the lives of many of our friends who went and responded well to corrections that are thriving out here. And we're grateful to be a part of our community and making it safer.
If I wouldn't have got arrested, I'd be dead. I'd be dead by now.
I'd be dead. Yeah, I'd be dead.
All
I went to prison prior.
our friends that didn't go are dead or dying or
yeah.
in pretty bad shape.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
Or the ones that are retired, they do not look good.
No.
Like they're in hospitals or they're doing life, and
My biker buddy used to live in these condos right here, one of my best friends, and he died about 6 months before I came home, smoking fentanyl and OD'd. And like Jesse said, man, the experience in prison, you can make it what you want.
That's right.
You really can. I don't really care what anybody says. You might have a bad day or two. You might see some stuff that just sucks. But if you want to go in there and do your time and learn and work on yourself and this and that, 99% of the time you're going to be okay doing that. There's going to be that 1%, those little variables, those bad mornings, shit happens, whatever. But we did time that way. And then we do this last time separately. Well, these guys were together for a little while, but I didn't catch Jesse
Till the end.
until the very last couple of months. I was working at the Second Chance Center as a peer, and Jesse came through as a participant. And I kind of saved his life. He was in bad shape, but I'm just kidding. But we had all made those changes, and those changes took, and they translated out here. And to be able to take control of our lives after the stuff that we've been through, after the stuff, more importantly, that we put other people through, not just the people that loved us. Like when I went back through and read my police reports, not to see who was telling on me or not to see what the cops had or that, but when I went to see how I impacted people, that was a completely different way to read a police report for me, and it was ugly.
Yeah.
It was absolutely ugly to people that were impacted. You say just a stolen car. You don't know what was in that car, right? Even if maybe they don't have the money to get it out, they didn't have insurance, whatever that looks like. For me, a special needs kid's passport or plane tickets to go to the Special Olympics that year were in that truck. So did I go out to intentionally commit a crime against a child? No, I didn't. Does that make a difference that child was harmed? It absolutely does not. That child was harmed as a direct result of my actions. And I didn't even take 2 seconds to think about that until I'd been in prison 4 or 5 years, when I decided to go through and read my police report from a human point of view. And to be able to take ownership, talk about that stuff out loud, make peace with it. Like, my victims probably care less whether I'm doing good or not, as long as I stay away from them, right? And that's their business, and I get it. But in order for me to, because for me, self-forgiveness, I can sit here and tell you, Tommy, I forgive myself, right? That's bullshit. For me, it's bullshit. Yeah. I have to practice self-forgiveness. In order for me to honor that destruction, to give those victims the people, I shouldn't call them victims, but the people that I victimized, the respect that they deserve, I have to continue to be the best version of me. Like you said, is this world better off for having had me in it? At this point, I can probably tell you no. I caused a lot of destruction for a long time. So now moving forward, I'm trying to balance that scale and at least get a little bit on this side of things. And we're doing a good job, all of us. We're making huge impacts. We're living our best lives. We're being of service every single day. Everything that we do, we don't even talk about prison, man. If it doesn't come up, we don't talk about, like we might make a little joke here or there once a month maybe, but it's not so. We talk about vulnerability, redemption, moving forward, how to help people. We're going into the prisons, giving back to those guys, mentoring. I had a guy this morning, man, this youngster that I'm working with that just got out 5 days ago. I talked to him yesterday. I was like, what's going on with work, man? And he's a good kid, he's ready to get on his feet. He's like, well, I'm kind of busy at the house, but I'm like, man, you're 5 days into this, find something. Let's just get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
I don't ever advocate to do a job you hate because it's not sustainable, especially, for anybody. And it's miserable anyway. But this morning he went to a Christmas tree lot. I guess he used to sell Christmas trees. He said, hey, can I get a job? And the guy's like, we're kind of full. He goes, all right, man. He took a look at the guy, and the guy had some prison ink on him, and he goes, well, I just got out. I'm just trying to find something to do to be productive. Was vulnerable with the guy, and the guy's like, man, I know how that is. And he hired him on the spot, and he started work today.
Yeah.
And it's
amazing.
100% on that kid for making those decisions and doing all that. But just being a small part of that and being able to help people see that they can change, see that they can move forward, see that they can win, begin to believe in themselves, teach them how to forgive themselves. It's such a rewarding feeling. I stuck every single thing you could imagine into my arm trying to feel good. And the work that we get to do now makes me feel a million times better than any of that. And the next morning when I get up, I might be a little bit tired, but I got no hangover.
Yeah.
Right? I get to feel great all the time now. This feeling that I was searching for through substances, through chemicals, never got it. But we get it now doing this, and it's super grateful.
I've been emotionally hungover. Like when we go to these big events, and we meet all these cool people doing cool stuff. Like the next day, I'm just like so spiritually like it just feels so good.
Yeah.
It just feels incredible.
That's awesome.
Like I felt like I know that something happened yesterday.
You know
and I
you're in the
feel
right place.
Yeah, it's amazing. So back to your career in law enforcement. Give us the weirdest thing you ever ran into in a house.
Yeah, let's hear that. man.
Yeah. Give us like this was odd. This is strange, and it made you guys all laugh and just.
I will tell you, there's things that stick out in my mind that I remember. Obviously, I told you about the gal that was sexually assaulted and gave birth to a baby. Years ago, I was working undercover as an officer. We were buying dope from a guy, and this guy, we were just buying weed. That's all we were buying, dime bags of weed. But it was down by the homeless shelter, and this guy comes out and does counter surveillance on us. He's following us. And you knew something was up when that happened, and that was obviously one of our concerns always was counter surveillance. And this guy was Cuban, it found out. And I remember we went, stood in line with with all the people there that were going to get food at Vinny's at St. Vincent de Paul's. It was a great organization, feeds these hungry people. But there was a lesson that I learned from that guy, a couple lessons. One of them was, if you ever studied like Matsberg and not Pavlov, dang, I forget my basic psychology, that there's a hierarchy of needs, and on the very bottom is
Maslow.
life. Maslow, there we go. And then there's Hertzberg was the other one.
Yep.
There's two of them, Maslow and Hertzberg. And as we're standing there, I'll never forget, we're watching this guy walk around, so we're trying to blend in with the people. And this lady drives by in a Corvette. And my partner, he screams out, "Ooh, baby," or something like that. And all these guys that are sitting there that live in the shelter, they look up, and then their topic of discussion is, "Boy, I wonder if we're having spaghetti today, or if we're going to have pork chops." You remember those? Those are great. And I thought that, but anyway, back to this guy, something just didn't seem right with this guy. And every now and then, if you're a cop, the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, and you go, "This guy wants to hurt me."
Yeah.
And whether he's sizing me up, saying how I'm going to kill this guy, how I'm going to do that, or whatever. Turns out he was a hitman for the CIA, had been. And I heard that story, and I thought, that's the biggest crack of horse pucky I've ever heard. And then later we tracked it down and found out that he was, in fact, had been. He was recruited from Cuba, recruited by the CIA, was injured on 3 missions. They had a rule that they retire you if you did it. And it all panned out. 25 years later, I found out it was legit. That this guy had been that. So that was a little odd. I'll never forget in patrol one day, I walked, another story. I brought tangerines from my tree at the house. If you ever eat tangerines, they're messy, they're nasty. They get all over my hands. I go, we used to have a paddy wagon at 25th Street and Broadway. That was our van. Probably some old folks down around there still remember our van used to be parked out there in front of the gambling shack, in front of the pool hall. And so we're driving, there's a park down at 32nd Street and Rozier. We're pulling up to this park, and it sits kind of, rather than true north, south, east, and west.
I know the park.
Yeah, I think it's El Raposo, isn't it? Something like that.
Maybe.
Anyway, it's just south of that industrial complex down there. We pulled in, and I'm looking at the sign that says women from an angle. And I'm looking at the lock because sometimes they would lock the park, sometimes they wouldn't lock the park. So I am just like laser zeroed in because I want to get my hands cleaned up. Open the door, and there's a guy and a woman in the restroom. And I'm thinking, wow, this is strange. And all at once I see him throw something in the toilet. I go, ooh, that would be a clue. That's a clue that you, as a cop, you go, something's not right here. So we took him into custody, and they'd thrown their crack into the toilet. So this is a little, tells one on me. I think I told you guys this story, Jeremy, in class. So my hands go down, and I had some rubber gloves on, but they sprung a leak. So when you're like digging in the toilet, and there's fudgies in there, your hand's leaking. I thought, gee. So I got the dope in custody, and then we shot to the hospital. We went to the one down on Baseline Road. And my partner says to me, he says, "So, Thompson, do you always do that?" I go, "Always do what?" He says, walk into the women's room. I go, I didn't walk into the women's room. He goes, the heck you didn't. They're back there laughing, saying they thought they'd be safe in the women's room, but they weren't. So we get them taken care of. I drive right back to this, and because I'd come at an angle, I didn't see the WO. All I concentrated on was men in the restroom. So here I am making an arrest in the women's room. So this was the question that we asked in class on ethics. Do I write and try to, I mean, I'm the joke of the station right now. If you're watching any TV shows with cop things where they're funny, well, they're making fun of Officer Thompson who walks into the women's room and makes a crack cocaine bust. That was a good one. No, every day's different. And I work with some good guys that because of the nature of our work, because you as you know, there are people in prison who are vehement about wanting not to go back to the joint, and they'll do anything. So we had to worry about that. I mean, fortunately, I never never had to shoot anybody. But I can tell you this, and I told my guys this, and again, I was their boss for about 15 years. And I said, you guys realize, when I was going away, I said, every day before I go into your serve a search warrant with you, and we served them every single day. That was our job. I mean, we literally served hundreds and several thousand warrants to the best of my calculation in that time period. And I'd always pray, say, dear Lord, bless us that my guys don't get hurt and nobody else get hurt. I don't want to go in and get in a shootout. I don't want to hurt anybody. And those kind of deals, I think my guys appreciated that when they found out that hey, their boss, I mean, when you're a cop, everybody in your squad, you know about each other's kids. Hey, Bobby's playing baseball, Cindy's playing volleyball, and they become part of your family. The closest thing to it would be the military. And I wasn't in the military, but I know there are days when I counted on my life. My guys counted on me to protect their lives. And when I was going away, I looked at my kids and says, I want you to look at these men here and women. They're the ones that protected your dad to come home in the middle of the night. And those things are important. You've got to have friends like that. And I would hope that your audience, your people that are there, think that they've got friends that are willing to step up to the plate for them, do whatever it takes to protect them. You know, and you don't have to do illegal things to protect people. You can protect them in other ways. You know, and again, I would hope, from what you're telling me with your organization, I would hope that people understand that you're there to help them, and that maybe if one person listens to this podcast and says, you know what, I need some help, or can talk to their brother, their sister, their mother, their father, their best bud, if they can talk them into availing themselves of your services, then it was worth it.
Absolutely.
It was worth however long I'm here talking to you.
I love how you said if it helps just one person, right? For us, that means 100% of our audience. So, but no, that's 100% of the people that are listening right now. But it really is, and it's something, because we've had some experiences, right? We're on Spotify, we get some messages here and there, and there was a guy in North Carolina that shot me a message. He found me on LinkedIn somehow and shot me a message, and listening to this podcast, he was able to get his brother into treatment, and it affected him. Like these conversations that we get to have here, granted, we like to come on here and joke around and, you know, and have some fun, but we're also hoping people are seeing that we can change. Like I literally used to be that guy that stood in line to use a dirty needle in prison.
And
that was me.
And I think that's what's as important as holding people accountable. You know, like when I went to prison, I deserved going to prison for the things that I was doing to the community. But with that being said, I also got better, and people can get better, and people shouldn't have to live with that stigma forever, that they're a piece of shit and that they can never get better and that they're always going to be their past. And I think that's what a lot of us struggle with, trying to break that stigma of just convincing people that people can change, people can get better. You know, there's a bit of good in the worst of us and a bit of bad in the best of us, you know. And it's just one of those things to where we're trying to inspire people to let them know that not only can they get better, but they can get better and they can help others get better.
Oh, that's crucial. People, we talk about judging people and doing this, and as a cop, when I arrest you, I have to judge, is there probable cause? Is there enough to book this person into jail or not in this investigation? But when we judge people and say this, we need to watch and not try to drill that into people that they can't change. People can change. I mean, I've seen people change. I've seen that. And you know, I would hope your listeners say, you know, dude, that's a crazy old cop over there. I don't even feel like the cops I've dealt with. I think it is. I think there's a lot of times people want to help. And I wanted to do that. When it came down to when they talk about sentencing, unless they had a pattern of continually hurting the community, I'm all for somebody going on probation. Because my experience is, if you go on probation and you screw up, you're going to get jammed up worse than if you did your time. How many times did you have people that go out and wanted to kill their number so they didn't get followed when they got out on the streets?
No. That's the truth. I want to give you guys some feedback. It's pretty cool. Nate said, this is neat because a lot of my family is law enforcement and a few retired Phoenix PD. And I'm the one who has been to prison twice. I'm closer than ever today with my family because of going to prison, making changes, and being a man of action today. And then we have a friend of ours, Erin Yeager. She's a therapist. She said she has 3 people listening there. So we've tripled our podcast audience in that statement. So I wanted to brag on that a little bit. But go ahead.
I got another
Tommy.
question for you, Tom. Did it ever bother you that maybe some of the sentencing guidelines were a little excessive for maybe personal use or possession of drugs over the years? Because I've been in prison with people that have gotten literally 11-year sentences for a half gram of drugs.
Yeah, 7 years for a half.
So one of the things we talk about, and I'm going to be off on my weights, but it used to be one of the interesting things, and your experience is probably going to be different than mine. But when I was out on the streets, I found that they followed demographic patterns. I mean, there were certain demographic groups that did meth. There were certain demographic groups that did crack cocaine. There used to be demographics. Older people used to do the heroin in the day, and certain things. When it came to sniffing paint, there was a certain demographic that sniffed paint.
George,
yeah.
George Nolan.
And people don't understand that.
I tried chrome cleaner once.
Did it work?
In a rehab, yes, absolutely it did. Can you tell?
No, but your fillings in your teeth are glowing.
How'd that rehab work out for you?
I don't know. I was like 13.
Oh,
Didn't affect me at all. So, back on point, crack cocaine used to be considered the scourge of society. Well, if I'm not mistaken, you got the same prison time for 750 milligrams of crack as you did for 9 grams of powder cocaine. Well, in the day, the white community was doing the powder cocaine.
No.
Who was doing the crack cocaine? It was the minority. Now, that's changed a little bit, and again, I've been out of the drug world for a while, so I don't know, but that was the reality. So does it adversely impact one group more than another one? I think they've tried to balance those out. One of the issues that we talk about when we're teaching school over at ethics and stuff like that, when we're teaching in basic criminal justice, is how can we enforce the laws without having disparate treatment to any specific group out in the community?
No.
And that's what you want to avoid. But one of the other things that we talk about is mandatory sentencing. Some will say that's good, some will say that's not. In fact, some of the things that we experience become an issue is I'm losing my train of thought here. That's because I'm getting old. But the question of mandatory sentencing, that was to get tough on crime. People get tired. You burglarize one person, and that travels around faster than saying, hey, something bad happened. Everybody understands, everybody hears it, and everybody says, I am never going to get broke into. Who's breaking into my house? Oh, it's drug dealers or drug users and stuff like that. In a lot of cases it is.
Yeah.
But the reality is, there's the mandatory sentencing. I like the idea of a judge having a say, and when you have mandatory sentencing, you take that away from the judge. So he can say, or she can say, whoop, sorry, law says I have to do this. That's not always the case. Obviously, now, one of the things that my personal experience was, rarely did I see a first-time offender ever do any jail time. It was generally the second, third, fourth time before they actually did any time in jail.
Yeah, any real time.
Yeah, any real time at all.
Yeah. I was stealing cars long before I got sentenced for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, the question to be asked is, how many cars did you steal, do you think, before you
I don't know,
ever got
probably
caught
like
for it?
50.
So you did 50
Probably
cars.
50, 60 cars. I don't know. I stole so many when I was an adolescent. By the time I did get caught for stealing cars, I was 26. So that's a lot of cars.
Now let me throw another one out at you while you're talking about this topic. How do you feel about the campaign or the move to eliminate the box?
Yeah.
The box at the bottom of everybody's
See,
employment thing.
this is where I'm at with it. They talk about you go to prison, you do your time.
Yeah.
That is the most false statement I've ever heard in my life. When I signed a plea bargain to go to prison for 3.5 years,
Yeah.
I did not realize that I also signed a stipulation that when I came out of prison, there were going to be over 44,000 laws that targeted me specifically. In some states, you can't be a barber if you have a felony conviction. Things are getting better. From a public safety point of view, there can be an argument made that people's pasts have to be put on board, but from a human point of view, it's already putting another huge obstacle in front of you. And that's something that I do actively. I own my own company as well, and I teach guys how to reframe that story. Because when you get in front of that employer for the first time, you have an opportunity to tell your story, to take ownership of it, to control the narrative, to take accountability, responsibility. I can tell you, for example, hey, my name's George. I went to prison for 17 years, and I'd really like to come work for you. Or I can say, hey, my name's George. I made some bad choices. I ended up incarcerated. But while I was incarcerated, I went and got my degree. I became a certified peer support. I created A, B, and C programs. I worked over here. And by the time I'm done talking, I already told you I made some bad choices, but the majority of that conversation is about the positive effects that it's had on me.
Yeah.
And that people who don't have that experience, that training, that opportunity to learn how to reframe and tell their story, and that box, well, those are the people. And I'm never going to, I was the guy that got fired, so now I got to sell drugs, right? I think about that, and I believed it, and I meant it, and everything. It wasn't my fault because I got fired. People get fired from their freaking jobs every day. That's not an excuse. But for me, it was because I didn't have the coping skills. I didn't have people like this to come and tell me, hey, you can do it anyway. Like, I took 10 years on the chin. Big deal I got fired at a job. You know, like if you're trying to wait out, it was just an excuse for me to return to drug use and criminal behavior. For me, it was an excuse to start selling drugs again. But selling drugs had nothing to do with it. I just wanted to get high again, and I could say I was selling drugs.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just that box can be a huge obstacle. How do you feel about it?
So I've got friends and people that have been involved in the criminal side of it. I think it's very easy for people that have never, it's eye-opening when you become involved or acquainted with people who have been through the criminal justice system. I mean, I have a lot of faith in it, and I think it's a great system. But little things like that, if we tweaked, if we made it a little different, and you could help people out, I would hope that nobody could not get hired or lose a job because they find out, oh, you're a convicted felon. Now, there's some things that I feel strong about. I mean, I'm a strong Second Amendment guy, and I think that, you shouldn't possess a weapon unless you've shown that you're okay with it. Unless you can prove that what I did 20 years ago is not influencing me what I did today. In fact, when I say that, let me pull that back and say that maybe what I did 20 years ago is influencing me today. That I realize I don't do that I learned. So I turn prison time into what everyone thinks it is. When I teach classes on it, we talk about the prison system, the biggest thing I say, what do you think the prison is for? I ask them, do you think it's to rehabilitate people? Oh, yeah, that's what it's there for. Well, that's not always the case. In fact, you guys might have some very, very strong opinions about that. And you're there to fix that and change that and make it to where you can rehabilitate people.
That's right.
Well, that's one of the biggest things that I'm advocating for is
Change happens on the inside.
yeah, treatment should start day one of incarceration, not at the end of it or not right after you get out.
Yeah.
No. And the Department of Corrections now, I know it sounds like you're kind of a little bit out of the loop now in law enforcement. You're enjoying your retirement, right? That's pretty awesome. They have a new director at the Department of Corrections, and this dude's a rock star. He takes the rehabilitation and reentry part of it extremely seriously. He's open-minded to. I was literally allowed back into prisons the day after I got out, which is like unheard of, because of the work that we were doing while I was incarcerated. When you're able to show you're doing something that's meaningful, that you have a purpose. Obviously there's a process. You got to put everything together, have a plan, and then go in there and demonstrate it. I was able to bring these guys with me to a new group we started on the higher custody yards. There's still a lot of room for growth for sure, but the door's open for that kind of change, right? They're advocating for it. They're allowing it to happen. It's not just words and fluff and the doors closed. You can't see into the prisons, so they don't really have to do what they say they're going to do. But what they're doing now is what they said they were going to do, and they're involving us. Jeremy and I go and speak at CODA, at the Correctional Officer Training Academy, at graduations. We talk to the new officers. Our buddy Frankie got us involved with that. He's listening to right now. We talk to the new officers before they even go on the yards, and we talk to them about what our relationships look like, what different ways you can talk to us, without, you can still do your job and be kind. It's easy to do your job and be a jerk, right?
Yeah.
And it's easy for me to do my time and be a jerk.
Yeah.
Taking that kind road's a little bit more difficult. That's when you show your skill level. That's when you show your experience. That's when you show your care. And the cool thing is, most of the people that go into law enforcement, they go into it because they want to help.
Yeah.
They want to make a difference.
Absolutely they do.
So if that's what you want to do, right? If that's what you're saying at the front end of this, then do that when you're at work, right? Yeah. Continue to do that. And it's just really cool to be involved in the stuff that we get to be involved with. And you're talking about that check the box. And this is a crazy statement for me to say. First of all, I have a police officer sitting at the kitchen table. That never would have happened, right? I have an FBI friend who just retired a couple of weeks ago. And he lives across the country on the other side in South Carolina. And I don't want to talk too much because I don't know how much of it's like public, but he's creating a business where we're able to kind of reestablish trust and get verified through a process that's proprietary to him that he's creating, for people to be able to be vetted. And like you said, what I did 20 years ago, okay, cool, well, here's this thing, and this is what I've done since, and it's all verified and signed off by an accredited agency. And I was like, man, what a cool idea that is.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's a team effort. I mean, obviously, when we talk of the criminal justice system, we talk about law enforcement, then we talk about courts, then we talk about corrections. The three components is what we teach about that. And they all have to be part of the team. They all have to look at it from the perspective. I mean, I think you would agree there are some people that they ain't never going to change.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Or at least you don't think they're ever going to change. But then the minute you say that, you find out, well, you can't stereotype everybody that's been to prison. And the question I would ask that people need to understand, and I'm sure you probably get this out, but while you're podcasting, I would ask the question as, what was the point? What did it take to get you to change? Well, at what point did you say, dang, I'm running against the wall, banging my head, the wall's not moving?
I literally had to be stripped down to nothing. Absolutely nothing.
And
nothing.
So prison did that for you?
Yes.
And me.
Nothing.
For me, I hit my rock bottom in there. I got my rights read to me for a violent crime that I committed while in prison. Yeah. And I walked out of that room and I'm like, first of all, I was so relieved that person was okay. And then second of all, I was like, I'm telling my family I love them, I'm saying all this stuff. But all my actions say I love prison. I love drugs. I love this dumb gang shit that I'm trying to be a part of that I'm not even a part of. Like, it was just absolutely crazy former rock bottom. And in that moment, that's when I realized, like, I had no idea who I was. I had no values. I had nothing that I believed in. Kind of like Jeremy, I was stripped down to nothing, but in a spiritual sense of it, I was just completely lost.
So, in a perfect world, you can take everybody that's in the joint right now, unscrew their head, and pour in the magic sauce to help them understand that. How would you get that message to them? How would you get them to? What if you could sit down? When you sit down with people, what do you tell them?
See, for me, there's no blanket fix. His needs, my needs, your needs are all going to be different. But every single one of us has a desire to get better, right? That's why I don't really use recovery words or substance use or reentry. Like, I kind of stay away from that because it's kind of stigmatized. Maybe people are tired of hearing about it. Maybe it's some BS class that you got stuck in that you hated. But do you want to get better? Most people agree with that. That's the beginning of hope. Because hope, as far as I'm concerned, is the most powerful drug on this planet. Once somebody has hope, then we can. Hope's not a strategy, though. Hope's fuel, right? You can make you can have all the hope in the world, it's not going to get you anywhere. But once we start adding a strategy to that, goals, what your next steps are, what does that look like, getting some specific answers.
The installation.
Yeah, because I ran around talking about loyalty, honor, and respect while I'm cheating on my old lady, stealing cars, and robbing houses. There was no loyalty, and honor, and respect. Those were just words I like to say. So when we start defining values, not just, right?
Yeah, words I like to say.
That's all they were, and they were meaningless. But when we talk about defining values, okay, loyalty is a big deal to you, or let's say honor. Honor is a big deal to you. Okay, cool. That's awesome. When have you shown honor? Well, I didn't tell on my co-defendant. Okay, awesome. Great job. What didn't you tell on him about? Oh, we stole a car. Okay, where's the honor in that? Where's the respect in that? Where's the I guess there's not. And that little bit of lightweight education really started that oh shit moment. Like, man, I don't stand for anything. All the stuff that I'm saying, my parents have called me a liar for a long time, but now I'm able to see that I've been lying to myself, which is the most dangerous thing. I told myself after 6 years of being sober, I was just going to get high that Friday. Like I magically had overcome my addiction. And I ended up a year and a half later with a 10-year prison sentence.
Yeah.
So the short answer, bringing hope. That's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, when I hit that 12-year sentence, it still wasn't enough, Like George, I experienced, where you get that slip of paper under your door and you're under a 2A investigation for murder. It's like my ego finally had its day in court when I was inside, right? And once that was removed, I was like, holy shit, I'm just somebody who doesn't love themselves. And matter of fact, I don't even know what it is. I don't even know how to feel it. I don't know what's going on. And I literally still had 9.5 years left to do. So I got introduced to the program of recovery that Jesse and I and George supports. And I just hit the ground running with some service. And I learned how to live by helping other people. Found out what love was. And started putting in all the things that I started doing, like my goals and my dreams and my possibilities, my journaling, my exercise. Literally, like, I was very predictable. I would say I became very predictable. And Jesse, doing time with him was a blessing because I could have a safe space for somebody to not only get my six in like a state of hypervigilance, because we didn't know like when the next shoe was going to drop or some dude was going to steal a honey bun and then everybody starts fighting, right? We would create those safe space for us to really thrive and talk about recovery and do what we needed to do to get out of there safely. And it did. Like George said, it all transitioned out here. And we're very fortunate. We're very fortunate to have what happened to us from the time we got arrested, even the moments that we had to go through to get us to where we're at today.
So is it still the common denominator then that there comes a time when you hit rock bottom and you say, I ain't going nowhere. I'm banging my head against the wall and my head hurts and the wall ain't moving.
No. The pain's too great.
Pain's too great.
You talk about like those factors
Great.
for desistance, right? Like why do people get out of the crime? And my friend Maddie, she's a professor at ASU. She runs the ION Network. She's 27-year-old, just amazing human being. Yeah, she's a beast. And she had given me that was the first time I ever heard that word. And I started looking through all the different factors on desistance and why people stop committing crime and all that. And I seen aging out was one of them. And for me, I don't want to say I stopped committing crime because I'm old, right? Because that's kind of a cop-out. Like, I wasn't intentional about that. I just got old and stopped committing crime. And as I've reflected on that, because I learn more about myself every day doing this kind of work. And I absolutely still have criminal thoughts. I absolutely still think about taking the easy way out or what this would look like. Or I know the little thoughts that are good. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Would you like a waffle? But changing that mindset and being able to identify those thoughts and think about the past and play the tape through and see what that's actually going to look like. It's just that rock bottom and having that constant maintenance. We all work in recovery, and that's great. That's not a recovery program. I have to do my own stuff. This is part of my recovery program, hanging out with these dudes, having these kind of conversations, having the people in my life that I do, going to school, being an entrepreneur, continuing to bring hope in, volunteering in the prisons. That's all important stuff that's a part of my personal program that helps me to stay in this mindset, because I promise you, Tommy, I can forget about rock bottom pretty quick. And I can tell you all the cool stuff that I did when I was a POS, right? And I can live in those microseconds. I did 17 years in prison. I didn't do 17 years of drugs on the streets. I think I did 2.5 years out of those 17 on the streets.
Me too.
Yeah, microsecond of pleasure.
My relapse was 3 months and I got 12, right?
I will talk to you about those 3 good nights that I had and live in that moment and forget about all the other stuff. But we are getting into the last few minutes here, Tommy. So leaving today with our, 4 listeners, because Aaron's got 3 people at her house. Thank you, Aaron, for having people on the couch.
They've tuned out by now. They're gone.
Aaron's out. Aaron and the whole crew. But for the people that are listening tonight, right, and the people that are going to listen in the future, what's the message you want to leave people with? It could be whatever your message is. You're an experienced man, right? You've been through a lot. What's some parting words for us, man?
I think there's good in everybody. Right. Some people you just have to dig a little harder to find it.
Yeah, I get that with Jesse. I see it clear.
And it's all one person at a time.
I agree.
And if people are willing to go one person at a time, you can get their message across, let them know they're there to help them. I hope people out there know that, one bad cop screws it for everybody, screws it up, because then everybody takes the hit for it. And one of the things I told you when I was an information officer, some cop would do something stupid, I'd have to go, oh my gosh. I felt like I was in a battleship in a World War II movie, and I could see a torpedo coming at me. And I couldn't turn the boat fast enough to get away from it, but I knew it was coming. But they need to understand that there's good people. Everybody has good in them. And the one question I would ask that maybe you guys could finish with, so I'm a parent, I got 7 kids, I got 12 grandkids. What can I do to help my kids stay productive members of society? In our house, we never have discussions about who's going to prison, who's not. What can I do, as a father, as a grandfather, to keep my family straight? And I'm not talking about, are they... when I say straight, I mean, are they staying away from drugs? Are they staying away from crime? What can I do that can impact the community, to my own personal people, my own family, my own kids?
That's a great question. The thing for me that comes to mind, in all honesty, let them be heard. Have the conversations. Right? If someone's struggling, talk to them. We don't fix people. I can't tell Jesse what he's going to do to make him feel better, but I can ask Jesse, hey, what's happening? What's going on with your life right now? And genuinely care about his answer. Sometimes we just need to get it off our chest or say it out loud, because in my head it might sound absolutely terrible, or in my case, absolutely brilliant. And then I say it out loud and I'm like, oh dang, George, that doesn't make any sense at all. Now that I have to say it in public. That's where I'm at with it. Just ask people to be heard. And
I'll tell you one of the things that I do with my family and with my friends is that I've developed an open line of communication to where I'm honest with every aspect of my life, especially with these two and with my dad. And I just tell the truth. And what that does is it brings a certain level of humility and vulnerability and a level of connection that I never had before. Because growing up, I was always sneaking around, so I would always try to keep things from my family. And it would drive my parents nuts because they would always want to know what was going on, and I would always keep it to myself. Even with my friends, when I would start getting off track after I'd gotten my life back together for a little bit of time, and then I would start kind of sneaking around, as I would start doing bad things again. Well, now, today, I've got people that hold me accountable, including my family, including my friends. And that really helps because if I've got something going on in my life, I know that I can call George or Jeremy at any time or talk to my dad at any time about what's going on and not have to worry about judgment. And that helps, having people in your life that aren't going to judge you if you've got something going on. Because as soon as I feel like you're going to judge me, I shut down. And once I shut down, then what?
Defensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say, like, one of the things that you're talking about, Tommy, is right, is time. I believe that time is, and I'm going to speak for George and Jesse, is that time is the most valuable commodity that we can give another human being. And if we approach them with that good that we know that they have, using that, with no judgment, always being honest, and creating the right safe space for them to be vulnerable. Right? We can do that because we teach people how to treat us, right? And if I teach them that they can't approach me, that they can't talk to me, the moment I do, they're going to become defensive and shut down. So, giving them that time, knowing that you care about them, that you love them no matter what, that, and just be very non-judgmental and honest. Yeah, I like the truth.
That's awesome. And as we wrap up here, I just want to say one thing. You mentioned a quote with one person at a time, right? The salvation, trying to fix everybody at once. It not really. We've tried blanket fixes. It doesn't work. There's a really cool quote by Dag Hammarskjöld, and it says, "It is more noble to give yourself completely to one individual than to labor diligently for the salvation of the masses." And in closing, right, when people like us change, if you only helped me, right, and I tell this to corrections officers all the time, I'm committing 10 felonies a day in my addiction. Before I leave my house, I have a stolen car outside. I have a gun in my pocket. I have a needle. I've already gotten high. There's 4 that's just off the top of my head before I got in the car. Much alone to go, forgetting that I'm going to go around and commit crimes all day long. So 10 a day is not a unreasonable estimate. Well, I've changed because of the way staff treated me, because of the interactions I've had, because of the support that I've had. That's at least 3,650 felonies that aren't being committed this year because I've made a change. So being able to lean into that one person, affect that change, we can't fix everybody. But the ones that want you, the ones that are open up, the ones you connect with, like Jesse said, there's so much power in that salvation of the one. And that's something you touched on. So I wanted to give you that quote before you left. We really appreciate you being here. This is phenomenal. You drove all the way over here to this beautiful neighborhood on Indian School and 28th Street. Come hang out with a bunch of outlaws to advocates. So thank you for being here, Tommy.
Thank you for your years of public service.
Absolutely,
Thank you, brother.
man. Thank you so much. We have a great night, Tommy.
You bet. Thanks.